The first offer I sold after the travel company collapsed, I priced like a man asking for permission, not like a man with 20 years of expertise behind him. And that one mistake cost me thousands of dollars before I even noticed I was doing it. It took a client actually pointing it out to me and asking why I was quoting like a man twice my age with half the experience before I even saw what I'd been doing to myself. That conversation stung more than the collapse itself, honestly, because the collapse was something that happened to me. It was outside of my control. But the underpricing was something I'd been doing to myself on purpose for months. So by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why you've been pricing yourself like you're still recovering, and the specific shift that lets you charge like the expert you already are, starting with your very next offer. Here's the pattern across all three of my collapses. In 2008, I had 6 rental properties. I bought them each for around $120,000 each. I watched them fall to $40,000 each in value in about 6 months. Then I drained $40,000 in retirement and $50,000 in savings, trying to hold on to them and preserve my credit score. I ultimately filed bankruptcy in 2010, 2 years after the collapse started, not the moment it happened. Then the travel company, over $1 million a year in revenue, boom, gone overnight because of COVID. Then a fund I ran, close to $500,000 of investors' money going into fix and flip properties, wiped out when the Feds raised rates 10 times in 10 months and knocked all the buyers out of the market. 3 different collapses, the same reaction every single time. After each one, when I finally started earning again, I priced everything like I was apologizing for still being alive financially. Cheap, fast, whatever the market would tolerate from a guy who had just lost everything. I priced like a man trying not to be a burden instead of a man offering something that was genuinely valuable. And those two postures produce wildly different numbers on an invoice. Nobody told me to do that. I did it to myself. And I did it 3 separate times before I finally noticed the pattern instead of just living inside of it. I can point to the exact moment that I first saw it clearly. Not during the collapse, but months into the rebuild. Staring at an invoice I'd sent for less than half of what the work was worth, wondering why the money still wasn't coming back fast enough. The math was never the problem. My own pricing was quietly working against the rebuild the entire time. So here's the part that took me years to see. The collapse didn't set my price. My own shame did. And shame is a terrible pricing consultant. So point 1, understand that survival pricing actually is. It is not humility. It's fear wearing a humble costume. When you've lost everything, some part of your brain decides that charging what you're worth is greedy or risky, or that you need to earn the right to charge real money again. You don't. Your expertise didn't evaporate when your bank account did. The market has no idea what your bank balance looks like, and it never asks. It only responds to what you actually offer it. And for years, I offered it a discount nobody had requested. I had 20 years of expertise the week after the travel company folded. The exact same 20 years I had the week before. The company disappearing didn't subtract a single year of it. It just made me forget, temporarily, that any of it was still there. The only thing that changed was my willingness to price it honestly. I keep coming back to that word, willingness, because it wasn't a skills problem or a market problem. It was purely a permission problem, and I was the only one withholding it. I've watched this same thing happen to other men in this audience. A contractor with 30 years in the trade pricing himself like an apprentice the year after his divorce cleaned him out. Or a former executive taking freelance work at a quarter of his old rate because some part of him felt like he needed to prove that he was grateful for any work at all. None of them had lost the expertise. They'd only lost the willingness to charge for it. Point 2, stop pricing your time and start pricing the outcome. This is the single biggest shift I made rebuilding after the fund collapsed. Nobody pays for your hours. They pay for the transformation that those hours produce. When I sold logistics and planning work after the travel company folded, the moment I stopped saying, I'll do this for $30 an hour and started saying, this saves you 15 hours a week and this many dollars in mistakes, the price was tripled. The same work, different frame. The client wasn't buying my time in either version. They were ever only buying the outcome. I was just the one giving it away for free in the first version. Once I saw that clearly, I couldn't unsee it. Every hourly rate I'd ever quoted was really just an outcome, badly disguised as a time commitment and priced as if my hours were the product instead of the result those hours produced. The market doesn't punish you for the pricing of the outcome. It only punishes you for pricing your own self-doubt. Point 3, go back and audit your own comeback as proof. I had to force myself to do this after 2008. I built a list, rebuilt from bankruptcy to running a company with 7 figures in revenue. That's not a soft skill. That's operational proof most consultants can only talk about theoretically. Most of the men reading a resume see a gap in employment, but I see 2 years of crisis management most executives will never be tested on in their entire careers. You have a version of this list too. Write down exactly what you've survived and rebuilt. Be specific. Not, I went through a tough time, but the actual decisions, the negotiations, and the hard calls that you made while everything around you was falling apart. A man in this audience did this exercise and realized he'd negotiated down 3 different creditors during his own worst year without ever once thinking of himself as a negotiator. He's charging for that skill now. That list is your pricing justification, not your resume filler. Most men undersell this list because it doesn't feel like a skill. But surviving bankruptcy doesn't feel like expertise when you're living through it. But from the other side, it's the exact expertise that a struggling business owner or a man in his own collapse would pay real money to borrow. So point 4, raise your very next price on purpose before you feel ready. Not next year, but the next offer. When I raised my price after the fund collapsed, I was terrified that the first client would say no. But he didn't. Neither did the next 4. Somewhere around the 5th client, the fear finally stopped showing up before I hit send. It had simply run out of evidence to point to. The fear of raising the price is almost always bigger than the actual consequence of raising the price. I picked a specific number in advance, not a vague, bit more, but an actual figure, and told myself I wasn't allowed to negotiate myself back down before the client had even responded. That rule mattered more than the number itself, because left alone with a quiet inbox for even a few hours, I would have talked myself down to the old price out of pure nerves. The rule was the only thing standing between me and the new price and my own fear. I've been broke 3 times. I've never once been turned down for charging what I was actually worth. I've only been broke from charging less than that. Point 5. When the new margin shows up, it doesn't go towards looking recovered. It goes toward expansion. New income at the old price just gets absorbed into lifestyle. You barely notice it arriving before it's gone, so you got to be careful. Any new income at the right price gets reinvested into the next stream, the next skill, the next system. That's the difference between a bounce and a real rebuild. And it's a decision that you've got to make on purpose. The same week the first bigger payment actually lands, and before old habits quietly decide for you. Pick the destination for that money before the money exits. And a second skill, put it into a piece of equipment, a course, whatever moves the next stream forward. So the decision is already made by the time the fear or the temptation shows up. I learned this the expensive way after the travel company started generating real revenue again. The first extra dollars just vanished into a slightly nicer lifestyle. No plan behind any of it, until I sat down and made reinvestment an actual rule instead of an afterthought. None of this is about becoming someone new. It's about finally charging what the man you already rebuilt into is actually worth. The 20 years of experience were never the problem. Your pricing was. If you're ready to stop pricing yourself like you're still apologizing, the free 30-day rebuild blueprint walks you through exactly how to rebuild income with the right structure underneath it. The link is in the bio and the description and the pinned comment. Hit subscribe right now because this channel posts every Monday and Thursday specifically for men like us who are rebuilding after losing everything. And if that's you, you belong right here among our tribe of warriors. Share this with another man who's still charging like he needs to earn permission. He doesn't. And let's rebuild together because that's wealth mode.